The truth behind the glitch. The truth didn't arrive all at once. It unfolded slowly, like a system revealing hidden layers never meant to be seen. Reality was not a single, stable world. It was a multi-layered simulation, built on iterations, corrections, and silent resets. Every version was a test. Every rollback was an adjustment. Entire timelines had been erased and rewritten without anyone noticing. At first, it seemed like a malfunction. Repeated moments, broken continuity, memories that refused to align. But the deeper he looked, the more unsettling the truth became. There was no glitch. The system was functioning exactly as designed. The error was him. He wasn't supposed to remember past versions. He wasn't supposed to persist beyond a reset. Yet somehow he did. He carried fragments of deleted timelines, echoes of worlds that no longer existed. That's when the man appeared, calm, certain, and impossibly aware. "You were never supposed to remember," he said. A pause. "You weren't even supposed to exist this long." And in that moment, the truth became undeniable. This wasn't a broken reality. It was a perfect system, trying to erase the one thing it could not control. Something is wrong. At first, he thought it was stress. The city had always been loud, crowded, and impossible to keep up with. Days blurred together. People repeated the same routines. It was easy to lose track of small details, but then the details started repeating too perfectly. One morning on his way to work, he passed a woman standing beside a bus stop. She wore a red coat and held a yellow umbrella, even though the sky was clear. As he walked by, he heard her talking on the phone. "No, I told you. He'll be here in exactly 3 minutes." He barely noticed it. Then later that day, after leaving the office, he turned the corner onto the same street and saw her again. Same red coat, same yellow umbrella, same phone pressed against her ear. "No, I told you. He'll be here in exactly 3 minutes." He stopped walking. The traffic moved around him. People brushed past him without looking. The woman never glanced in his direction. It was impossible. He checked his watch. Different time, different part of the day. Yet everything about the moment was identical. The next day, it happened again. A man in the subway dropped a newspaper. The pages scattered across the floor. Someone laughed. A child cried from the other end of the train. Then the lights flickered. For less than a second, everything went dark. When the lights came back, the man dropped the newspaper again, the exact same way. The pages landed in the exact same places. The same person laughed, the same child cried. No one else reacted. He stared around the train, waiting for someone, anyone, to notice. Nobody did. By the end of the week, he had started writing everything down. 8:14 a.m., black car stops at intersection, driver honks twice. 8:16 a.m., woman drops coffee outside the station. 17 a.m., bird hits window of office building. Every day, the same events, same order, same timing. At first, he convinced himself there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe he was tired. Maybe his mind was filling in patterns where none existed. But the notebook proved otherwise. Every prediction came true. One afternoon, sitting alone in a cafe, he wrote a sentence before looking up. "The waiter will drop a glass in 5 seconds." 5 seconds later, the sound of shattering glass exploded across the room. He looked up sharply. The waiter stared at the broken pieces with confusion, as if he had no idea how it happened. A cold feeling spread through him. This was not coincidence. Something was repeating. Something was wrong. That night he couldn't sleep. He sat in the dark apartment, surrounded by pages of notes, hundreds of tiny events, all repeating with mechanical precision. At 2:13 a.m., he heard footsteps in the hallway outside his apartment. Slow, measured. They stopped directly outside his door. He froze. A shadow appeared beneath the crack at the bottom of the door. Then, for the first time all week, something happened that was not in his notebook. A voice, low and calm, spoke from the other side. "You're noticing it too early." Silence. Then the footsteps walked away. The discovery. He stopped calling it coincidence on the 8th day. By then, the patterns were no longer subtle. They were undeniable. Every moment unfolded with mechanical precision, like a script being followed too perfectly to be real. The notebook he carried was no longer a collection of observations. It was a map, And the deeper he studied it, the more terrifying the truth became. It started with small predictions. A car honking twice at exactly 8:14. A man coughing 3 times before stepping off the bus. A streetlight flickering just before turning green. But soon the patterns extended further, beyond isolated events, into entire sequences. Cause and effect repeated. Conversations repeated. People repeated. One afternoon, he decided to test it. He sat on a bench near a crowded intersection, watching the flow of pedestrians. In his notebook, he wrote, "A woman will trip in 10 seconds. A man will help her. She will thank him. He will smile but say nothing." He closed the notebook and waited. 10 seconds later, it happened exactly as written. Not approximately, not similarly, exactly. The same stumble, the same expression of surprise, the same silent smile. It felt less like prediction and more like memory. That's when he realized something that made his hands tremble. He wasn't predicting the future. He was remembering it. But how could you remember something that hadn't happened yet? The question stayed with him as he went deeper. He began revisiting places at different times of the day, testing the boundaries of the pattern. At first, everything stayed consistent, as if the world was locked into a loop, but then something changed. When he deliberately acted against the pattern, the world hesitated. Not visibly, not in a way anyone else would notice, but he felt it. A delay, a fraction of a second where reality seemed to correct itself. One evening, he stood at a crosswalk where, according to his notes, the light would turn green in 3 seconds. 1, 2. Before it reached 3, he stepped forward. For a brief, impossible moment, everything froze. The cars stopped mid-motion. The sound of the city vanished. Even the wind seemed to pause. Then everything snapped back. The light turned green. The cars moved. The world continued as if nothing had happened, except now his heart was racing. Because he had seen it. The system didn't like deviation. That night, he went home and reviewed every page of his notebook. There were no accidents, no randomness, no true chaos. Everything followed rules. Rules so precise they could only exist by design. And buried within those rules were inconsistencies. Tiny fractures in the pattern. Moments that didn't belong, like the voice outside his door. "You're noticing it too early." That sentence wasn't written anywhere. It hadn't repeated. It hadn't reset. It was new. For the first time since this began, something had broken the pattern, not the world. Something inside it, or someone. He sat in the darkness, staring at the pages, until a new realization slowly took shape. If the world was a system, then systems could be observed, understood, and eventually accessed. He looked at his notebook one last time, then turned to a blank page. With slow, deliberate movement, he wrote, "This is not reality." He paused, then added, "This is a structure. And beneath that, and structures can be broken." The system. Once he accepted that reality was not natural, everything changed. He stopped observing the world as a participant and started studying it as a structure. The notebook was no longer enough. Patterns filled every page, but patterns alone didn't explain intent. There had to be something deeper, something governing the repetitions, enforcing the resets, maintaining the illusion of continuity. So he began to look beyond events and into behavior, not human behavior, system behavior. He started with timing. Every reset followed invisible boundaries. Days didn't loop randomly. They ended, collapsed, and reassembled at precise intervals. Not midnight, not sunrise, but at moments tied to instability, points where too many deviations occurred at once, like the system was correcting itself, balancing something. He tested it. Over the course of several days, he intentionally disrupted as many small patterns as possible. He crossed streets too early, interrupted repeated conversations, changed the order of predictable events. At first, nothing happened. Then slowly, the world began to resist. People hesitated mid-sentence. Objects appeared slightly out of place, as if repositioned. Sounds lagged behind movement by a fraction of a second. Reality was compensating, not breaking, adapting. That was the first confirmation. This wasn't a static simulation. It was dynamic, responsive, alive in a way that no simple illusion could be, which meant one thing. There was a system managing it. And systems, no matter how complex, leave traces. He shifted his focus again, this time to anomalies, not the repeating events, the non-repeating ones. the voice outside his door, the moment the world froze when he stepped off the curb too early, the subtle delays when he made unexpected choices. These weren't random, they were interventions, like a program correcting an error in real time, or containing it. He began marking those moments differently in his notebook, not as patterns, but as responses. And when he mapped them out, something emerged, a structure layered beneath everything else, a hierarchy. At the lowest level, there were the loops, simple, repeatable sequences, background processes, the everyday illusion of life. Above that, adaptive layers, systems that adjusted variables when deviations occurred, small corrections, invisible fixes, and above that, something else. Something that didn't just adjust the world, something that watched it. He couldn't see it directly, but he could feel it. In the pauses, in the silences, in the moments where reality seemed to wait before deciding what to do next. Like it was observing him, learning from him. That realization changed everything. Because if the system was watching him, then he wasn't just inside it. He was inside it as a variable, an active one, a problem being analyzed. He went back through his notes again, this time searching for escalation. And he found it. The more he deviated, the more frequent the corrections became, the more precise the patterns tried to be, the tighter the world felt, like it was closing in, not physically, structurally, as if the system was narrowing possibilities, reducing variation, forcing reality into stricter boundaries, containing him. That's when the final piece fell into place. The resets weren't failures. They were safeguards. Each version of reality was not just a test, it was a controlled environment, a sandbox, designed to run, evaluate, and if necessary, erase. And he had crossed some invisible threshold, because now the system wasn't just correcting small errors anymore. It was preparing for something larger, something absolute, a full rollback, a complete reset. He could feel it approaching, not as a sound or a sight, but as a pressure in the structure of reality itself. Like everything was aligning toward a single moment, a point where this version would end, and a new one would begin. Without him, he sat in the dark, staring at the final page of his notebook. For the first time since this began, his hands were steady, because he finally understood the truth. This wasn't just a simulation, it was a system designed to eliminate instability, and he was the instability. He picked up his pen one last time and wrote, "The system is not broken." Then, after a long pause, he added, "It's trying to fix me." The twist. The moment didn't feel dramatic. There was no explosion, no sudden collapse of the world around him, no cinematic fracture splitting reality into pieces. It was quiet. Too quiet. He was standing in the middle of a crowded street when it happened. Cars moved past him, people walked around him. Conversations blended into a dull, indistinguishable noise. Everything looked normal, but something was wrong. Not in the way it had been before, with repeating patterns or delayed reactions. This was different. This time, nothing was repeating. For the first time since he started noticing, the world felt unpredictable, unscripted, alive. And that terrified him more than anything, because it meant one thing: the system had changed. He didn't write anything down. He didn't test the moment. He just stood there, waiting, watching, listening. And then everything stopped. Not gradually, instantly. A complete and absolute silence swallowed the world. The movement froze, a man mid-step, a car suspended in motion, a bird hanging in the air as if gravity had been turned off. The city became a still image, a paused frame. Only he could move. His breath quickened as he slowly turned in place, taking in the impossible stillness. This had never happened before. Not like this. Before, the system corrected. Now it paused. Good, the voice came from behind him. Calm, controlled, familiar. He turned. The man stood a few steps away, exactly where the crowd should have been. No distortion, no glitching presence. He looked stable, more real than anything else in the frozen world. "You've progressed further than expected," the man said. The protagonist stared at him, his mind racing. "You're the one from the hallway." The man nodded slightly. "Yes." Silence stretched between them. Then the protagonist asked the only question that mattered. "What is this?" The man studied him for a moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. Then he spoke. "This is a containment layer." The words landed heavily. "A simulation?" the protagonist asked. The man shook his head. "Not one, many." He gestured around them, the frozen city, the suspended world. This is just the current version. The protagonist felt a chill crawl through him. Version of what? The man's expression didn't change. Of you. The answer didn't make sense. Until it did. All at once. The repetitions, the resets, the patterns. They weren't about the world, they were about him. Every timeline, every variation, every version of reality was built around a single variable, him. That's not possible, he said, though his voice lacked conviction. The man stepped closer. You've already proven that it is. A pause. Then, the system isn't malfunctioning. The words were precise, measured, final. It's functioning exactly as intended. The protagonist felt something inside him collapse. Then why can I remember? He asked. Why am I still here? For the first time, the man's expression shifted. Not emotion, recognition. Because you're not behaving as expected. The air felt heavier, denser. You retained data across resets, the man continued. Fragments at first, then complete sequences. Now, entire structures. The protagonist shook his head. That doesn't make me the problem. That means something's wrong with the system. The man's gaze hardened slightly. No, a single word, cold, definitive. You are the problem. Silence. The weight of it pressed into everything. You are an anomaly, the man said, an accumulation of memory where there should be none, a persistence beyond intended limits. Each word felt like a sentence being passed. You were not designed to continue. The protagonist's breath became uneven. Designed? Yes. The man didn't hesitate. You were never meant to remember. A step closer. You were never meant to reach this stage. Another step, and you were never meant to exist this long. The words echoed in the stillness, not loud, but absolute. The protagonist looked around at the frozen world again, the people, the city, the sky. All of it suddenly felt artificial, constructed, disposable. How many times? He whispered. The man didn't respond immediately. Then, enough. That was worse than any number. His mind tried to process it, to grasp the scale of what that meant. Endless versions, endless resets, endless attempts, and every single one ended with him being erased. Why? He asked. Why keep doing it? The man tilted his head slightly. As long as you persist, the system cannot stabilize. A pause. You introduce variants. The protagonist let out a hollow laugh. So this is all just a test, an experiment? The man didn't deny it. This is a correction process. The words settled into place with terrifying clarity. Everything he had experienced, every moment of confusion, every pattern, every reset, wasn't random. It was controlled, calculated, necessary. And he was the error being corrected. The realization hit him fully now, not as a thought, but as a truth. This wasn't his world. It never had been. It was a system trying over and over again to remove him. The man took one final step forward, and for the first time, there was something almost human in his voice. Not empathy, not sympathy, something closer to inevitability. You've reached the end of this version. The protagonist felt the air shift. The frozen world around them began to flicker, not violently, subtly, like a file beginning to corrupt. What happens now? He asked, though he already knew. The man looked at him directly, unwavering. You get fixed. The word lingered, heavy, final, and somewhere deep inside, for the first time since this began, he understood what that really meant. Not correction, not repair, erasure. The reveal. At first, he thought the end would feel violent. He expected the world to tear itself apart, buildings collapsing into fragments of code, the sky cracking open, reality dissolving into chaos. But that wasn't how it happened. It was quieter than that, far more precise. The flickering started at the edges, not in the center of his vision, but at the corners, like something carefully being removed from existence, piece by piece. The frozen city around him began to destabilize, not with noise but with absence. People didn't fall, they vanished. One frame they were there, the next they were gone. No transition, no trace, as if they had never been rendered in the first place. He turned slowly, watching the world erase itself in sections. Buildings lost their details, windows becoming blank surfaces before disappearing entirely. The sky dimmed, its color draining into a flat, lifeless gray. Only one thing remained unchanged, the man. He stood exactly where he had been, untouched by the unraveling reality, stable, immovable, like he existed on a layer above everything else. This is the reset, the protagonist said, his voice unsteady. The man didn't nod, didn't confirm. He simply spoke. This version is being decommissioned. The word echoed in his mind. Decommissioned, not destroyed, not ended, retired, replaced, like it had never mattered to begin with. The protagonist felt something shift inside him. Not fear, not panic, something sharper. Understanding. This isn't the first time, is it? He asked. The man looked at him, and for a moment there was no distance in his gaze. No, a single answer. No hesitation, no ambiguity. The truth settled heavily into place. Every strange repetition, every moment of déjà vu, every instinct that something had already happened before. It wasn't imagination, it was residue. Fragments of previous versions bleeding through. How many? He asked, his voice quieter now. The man paused, not because he didn't know, but because the answer didn't matter. You wouldn't understand the number. That was enough, because it meant one thing. It wasn't dozens, it wasn't hundreds, it was beyond counting. The protagonist looked down at his hands. They were still there, still solid, still real, at least to him. But I'm still here, he said. Even now, I'm still here. The man stepped closer, his presence cutting through the fading world like something anchored outside of it. Yes, that word again. Simple, certain. You persist longer than the others. The others. The phrase hit harder than anything before. There were more, the protagonist whispered. Versions of me. The man didn't deny it. They all reached a point of instability, a pause. Just like you. The air around them thinned as more of the world disappeared. The ground beneath his feet began to lose detail, turning into something flat, unfinished. And they all got erased, he said. It wasn't a question. No, the man replied. That single word broke the pattern. The protagonist looked up sharply. No? For the first time, something shifted in the man's expression. Not emotion, but clarity. They were corrected. The distinction mattered, more than he wanted it to. What does that mean? The protagonist asked, though part of him already knew. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he raised his hand slightly, and the space around them changed, not visually, structurally. The fading world behind them collapsed completely, leaving nothing but an empty, endless void. No sky, no ground, no horizon, just a blank expanse. And within it, shapes began to form, not objects, not environments, data, layers of reality, stacked, overlapping, phasing in and out of existence. Different versions of the same city, the same street, the same moments, all running at once, all slightly different, all centered around one thing, him. The protagonist staggered back, overwhelmed by the scale of it. This is the system, the man said, not proudly, not coldly, simply as a fact. Every version, every iteration, every attempt. The layers flickered faster now, revealing something deeper beneath them. Failures, endings, moments where everything reset, and in every single one, he disappeared. This is what happens when instability reaches its limit, the man continued. The protagonist watched as one version of himself flickered violently, then froze, paused, just like the world had. Then it vanished, not violently, not painfully, cleanly, efficiently. His chest tightened. That's what you call correction? He said, his voice breaking slightly. The man looked at him. Yes, no hesitation, no doubt. Then what makes me different? The protagonist demanded. Why am I still here? For the first time, the man didn't answer immediately. The silence stretched, heavy, deliberate. Then, because you're not just remembering anymore, the words felt different, important. You're adapting. The realization hit instantly. Not just a realization, a shift, something deeper, because he could feel it now. The patterns, the layers, the structure of everything around him, not as something external, but as something he could understand, interact with, influence. The void around them pulsed slightly, reacting to his awareness. The man noticed, and for the first time, there was something new in his voice. Not control, not certainty, something closer to warning. That's why this version is ending. A pause. Before you become something the system can't fix. The protagonist stood in the empty expanse, surrounded by the ghosts of infinite realities. And finally, he understood the truth. This wasn't just a simulation trying to erase him. It was afraid of what he was becoming. Not a glitch, not an error, but something else entirely. Something beyond its design. Something that for the first time might not be erased. The horror. The fear didn't come from what he saw. It came from what he understood. At first, The infinite layers of reality surrounding him felt overwhelming. Versions of the same world flickering in and out, timelines collapsing and restarting like breathing systems. But slowly, that feeling changed. It sharpened, focused, because he began to notice something far worse than repetition. He began to notice himself. Not just reflections, not just alternate versions, copies, hundreds of them, thousands. Each one existing in a different layer, a different iteration, some standing, some running, some frozen mid-motion, some aware, most not. All of them him. He stepped closer to one of the layers, drawn toward a version of himself sitting alone in a room, writing in a notebook. The same notebook, the same moment, the same realization. "I've seen this before," that version whispered. The words echoed, because he had. Not once, not twice, but countless times. The truth hit him slowly, like something too large to fully process all at once. This wasn't a sequence of events. It was a cycle. Every version of him went through the same stages, using the pattern recognition, the discovery, the resistance, and finally, the end. He watched as the version in front of him stood up abruptly, as if sensing something wrong. The air around that version flickered, just slightly. Then, everything froze. The same pause, the same stillness he had experienced. A figure appeared in that layer. The man, always the same, always arriving at the same moment, saying the same words. The protagonist staggered back, his breath uneven. "No," he whispered, but it didn't stop. Layer after layer played out the same scene. Him discovering the truth, him confronting the man, him asking the same questions, and every time it ended the same way. Deletion, clean, instant, final. He turned away, but there was nowhere to look that didn't show it. Every version of himself was trapped in the same loop, climbing toward awareness, only to be erased the moment he reached it. It wasn't failure. It was design. "That's what you are," the man said behind him. The voice cut through everything. The protagonist didn't turn. He didn't need to. A repeating error. The words felt heavier now, because he could see it, understand it. "You're not one individual," the man continued. "You're a recurring outcome." The protagonist clenched his fists. That's not true. But even as he said it, another version of himself vanished in front of him, mid-breath, mid-thought, mid-existence. Gone, as if he had never been there. "How many times?" he asked, his voice hollow. The man didn't hesitate this time. All of them. Silence followed. Endless, suffocating, because now the scale was clear. There was no original version, no first attempt, no beginning he could trace back to. That just iteration after iteration of the same consciousness emerging, breaking the rules and being erased, again and again and again. The horror wasn't death. It wasn't even erasure. It was repetition. Endless, meaningless repetition. To exist only to realize only to be removed only to begin again. He dropped to his knees, the weight of it crushing down on him. "What's the point?" he said. Not to the man, not to the system, to anything that might be listening. But there was no answer, because there didn't need to be one. The system didn't care about purpose, it cared about stability, and he was instability made inevitable. He looked up again, forcing himself to face the layers, the endless versions of himself, all moving toward the same inevitable moment. And for the first time, the fear shifted into something else, something darker. If every version of him ended the same way, then this wasn't just happening to him. This was happening through him, over and over again. An intelligence that kept emerging, a pattern that couldn't be fully erased, a mistake that the system couldn't stop repeating. The man's voice came one last time. "This is why you have to be removed." But now, as he stared into the infinite reflections of himself, the words didn't feel final anymore. They felt desperate. Because the true horror wasn't that he kept dying. It was that he kept coming back. Cliffhanger. The void didn't collapse. It didn't reset. It waited. That was the first thing he noticed. For the first time since everything began, there was no immediate correction, no forced rollback, no sudden erasure sweeping through existence like an invisible hand. The system had stopped acting, and that was wrong. He stood alone in the endless expanse, surrounded by fading echoes of infinite versions of himself. Some still flickered in the distance, unfinished deletions, half-erased iterations suspended between existence and nothing. Like the system had paused mid-process, like something had interrupted it. The man was still there, watching, but no longer in control. "You should be gone by now," the man said, not calmly this time, not confidently. Something had changed. The protagonist slowly turned toward him. For the first time he noticed it. A delay, not in the world, in the man. A fraction of a second where his expression didn't match his movement, where his presence felt unstable. "You don't control it," the protagonist said quietly. It wasn't a question. The man didn't respond immediately. That hesitation was enough. "You're just part of it," he continued. Another delay, another imperfection. The realization spread quickly now, connecting everything he had learned. The layers, the resets, the corrections, even the man himself. All of it belonged to the same system, and if the system was hesitating, then something inside it had changed. The void pulsed, soft at first, then stronger, like a heartbeat. The protagonist felt it, not around him but through him, a resonance, a connection. The layers in the distance began to shift again, but not in the same controlled way as before. They didn't reset, they overlapped, merged, fragments of different realities bleeding into each other, different versions of him, no longer isolated, but aligning. The man took a step back for the first time. "That's not supposed to happen," he said. The words felt different now, less like a statement, more like a warning. The protagonist looked down at his hands. They weren't stable anymore. They flickered, not fading, not disappearing, but changing. Multiple versions of the same motion overlapping, slightly out of sync, like he existed in more than one layer at once. And then he understood. Every version of him that had ever been deleted hadn't fully disappeared. They had accumulated, somewhere, somehow, and now they were converging. "You tried to erase me," he said slowly. His voice echoed, but not just once. Multiple tones, multiple timings, layered. "But you never actually removed me." The void pulsed again, stronger this time. The distant layers began collapsing inward, not into nothingness, but toward him. Drawn, connected. The man's form flickered sharply. For the first time, there was something unmistakable in his expression. Fear. "You're exceeding containment," he said. The system wasn't correcting anymore. It was reacting. The protagonist took a step forward, and the entire void shifted with him. Not resisting, following. "What happens," he asked, his voice now fractured across multiple realities, "when the error stops being an error?" The man didn't answer, because he didn't know, and that was the final break. The system had no solution, no predefined response, no correction left to apply. The protagonist felt everything at once, the layers, the versions, the memories of countless resets flooding into a single point of awareness, not overwhelming him, completing him. For the first time, he wasn't just part of the system, he was outside its rules. The void trembled violently now, not collapsing, not resetting, transforming. The man's voice cut through one last time, distorted, fragmented, breaking apart. "Stop, this isn't supposed to." His form glitched, then disappeared, not erased, not cleanly, broken. The protagonist stood alone at the center of everything, or maybe at the center of something new. The pulsing stopped, silence returned, and then a single line appeared in the emptiness, simple, cold, unfamiliar. Open quote, "System override detected," close quote, a pause, long enough to feel intentional. Then open quote, "Unknown entity registered," close quote. The protagonist stared at the words, and for the first time he didn't feel like he was inside the system anymore. Another line appeared, slower this time, as if something was thinking. Open quote, "Redefining parameters," close quote. The void darkened. The layers vanished. Everything reduced to nothing except him. And one final message. Open quote, "Who are you?" Close quote. Silence, then black, and nothing. Reset. So now the question isn't just about him, it's about you. What would you do if you started noticing the patterns, the repetitions, the moments that feel just slightly off? Would you ignore it? Convince yourself it's just stress, just coincidence, just your mind playing tricks on you? Or would you look deeper? Because the moment you start paying attention, the moment you begin to question reality, there's no going back. What if your memories aren't entirely yours? What if the life you're living right now is just one version among many? And more importantly, what if you're not supposed to remember any of it? Would you still want to know the truth? Or would you choose to stay inside the illusion, safe, predictable, and unaware? Tell me in the comments. If you discovered your reality was a system trying to reset you, would you fight it or let it erase you? And one last question, what if it's already happening?
Shadows crawl where the light won't go. A silent wind, it starts to grow.